What's up everyone, welcome back to Metal Sessions. In today's video I'm going to show you how to make a battle jacket because it's a long time coming. But before we get into it though, I'm just going to talk you through the most common types of patches you're likely to come across. So we have these kinds of patches where there's a border around the outside and there's no adhesive at the back and they're a fairly straightforward shape. So the border is really useful, especially if it's your first time sewing something, because it'll allow you to keep everything quite uniform. Next we have the iron-on patches. This one is like a nod to roller derby because I'm attempting to do roller derby. The back is quite glossy usually, and it's just where the adhesive is, so you apply the heat to the front and then it adheres to the jacket. I personally don't recommend just using the iron-on patches on a jacket like this, mainly because if you take it to a gig or a venue or whatever, or maybe you just live in a very humid area, there'll be friction between you, other people, sometimes even the band, and it's likely to just slip off. And if you're in a big venue, you're probably going to lose it. Some people do like to invest quite a lot of money into their patches, and you don't want to lose it just because it wasn't on properly. So I'd suggest that you just sew it on just to be safe. Some people also like to use safety pins as a way of sticking their patches onto their jacket, and you can do that. I personally won't, just because I don't want a bunch of safety pins sticking out, and also I know I'm going to be wearing this jacket quite a lot, and I live in the UK, so it rains quite a lot and the environment isn't friendly to types of metal like that because they are eventually going to snap or rust or whatever. So it's something to bear in mind. The next type of patch I'm going to talk about are cloth patches. So these are very thin bits of material that usually have the band logo printed on them or stamped on them. The edges don't have a border, so they tend to fray quite easily. The only thing I would say about that is just make sure that you leave a gap between where the edge of the cloth is and where your stitches are going to be. So if it does start to fray at the top, your stitches are going to save the patch from completely coming loose and you losing it. The last type of patch is a back patch. So for those of you who don't know, this is essentially just a big piece of artwork, usually the person wearing the jacket's favourite band. I won't be using a band back patch. Instead, I wanted to do a bit of a nod to my heritage, so I'm going to be using some African kente as my back patch, and that is pretty much it. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm just showing you the type of needle I'm going to be using. This is a very thick curved needle, and this will help me puncture the denim, or if you have leather, the leather. And we're going to be using red thread to actually sew as opposed to black, because you guys will be able to see what I'm doing a little clearer, and I think it will look cool in contrast with the denim. We've also got some push pins, and this will help me stick down the patch so it doesn't move around everywhere. Totally optional, but you might find it useful. We've also got some safety pins, and we're good to go. Let's do it.
12 seconds later.
The only thing I forgot to mention though is get yourself some scissors. I don't know how I managed to miss that out in the what you need segment of the video, but you need some scissors. So in case you guys were curious as to which band patches I'm going to be sewing on today, these are the ones I have. I'll leave a link in the description with where I got them from. 2 of them are from eBay, but in all honesty they're very easy to find. So I have laid the jacket out and got rid of any sort of air bubbles and bumps that might interfere with the sewing. As you can see, I'm just pinning down the collar so that it doesn't get in the way as I'm trying to sew the first patch on. So I'm just readjusting the collar a little bit so that I can clearly see what I'm doing with this AC/DC patch. And I'm just going to quickly show you how to thread a needle. There are quite a number of tutorials on different types of stitches that you can do. I've opted to do what's called a whip stitch, just because I like the way it looks, and I think because of the colour of the thread, I think it will just look better. So I will show you how to do that. So here I'm just cutting off the excess thread. Please do that because it will help you thread the needle a little bit faster, otherwise you'll be sat there for ages, and yeah, we ain't got time for that. So once your thread is through, you're going to have to decide how long you want it to be. I usually go for arm's length because that's quite manageable. It just means that I have to re-thread the string at some point, but that's better than if you get a knot and you've got copious amounts of thread and it's harder to address any mistakes at that point. So go for about arm's length. You're then going to want to grab the end of your thread, I'd say maybe about 3 inches from the very bottom, and then double it up and tie a knot. Do this about 3 times. The purpose of the knot is to anchor the thread so that it doesn't slip through the fabric, and this will make sure that your sewing is nice and secure. So I'm now just going in and securing that AC/DC patch with the push pins, and this is a problem that a lot of people have where they accidentally put the pins directly through the front and the back of the jacket, and if you were to sew on top of that, you'll basically be sewing the front and the back of your jacket together and you won't be able to put your arms through and that'll look crazy. So lift up that particular section where you're putting your push pins and just double check that you're not sewing anything together that you shouldn't be, including things like pockets, because that can be a very easy mistake to make. So we can finally start sewing. So you're going to want to get your thread through the inside of the jacket and pull it to the outside rather than the other way around, mainly because your anchor knot will be hidden this way. So it's just more a question of neatness than anything else. And this is also where the curved needle does come in handy. The denim itself is very thick, the patch is very thick, so I had to fight with it a little bit less in order to move the thread through the layers of fabric. So at this point, I can see that I'm starting to run out of thread. So I'm just putting the last bit of thread through on the inside of the jacket. And as you can see, I've maybe got a few, maybe 3-4 inches left. So I'm just going to take that and cut the end where the needle is. Then I'm going to start tying knots. So I do this maybe 7 or 8 times, and what we're doing is creating another anchor so that the thread again doesn't slip through, kind of like in the beginning when we start threading. So I'm just going to do this quite a few times. It won't be anywhere near as thick as your initial anchor, but it will suffice. So I'm just pulling on it slightly just to see how secure the stitches are, and we can see that they're pretty good, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish off the rest of the patch. So as you can see, I've gone in and just finished off the front patches, so we've got most of them on now, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. I've also added some safety pins on the collar. I'll probably do a few more of those. And we're now going to start working on the back of the jacket. So on the back, we're going to have the Iron Maiden patch as well as the back patch. So I'm just laying it out and making sure that there aren't any gaps or bumps or anything that will interfere with the sewing. So now that the Iron Maiden patch is done, I'm going to begin cutting out the kente. And traditionally, back patches are a square shape, but I actually wanted mine to be a circle just because, you know, why not? It's 2020. So I'm going to use like a biscuit tin to stencil that out and help me create that shape. It's probably not going to be perfect. It definitely isn't perfect, but anyways. So now that the circle is all finished, I'm going to lay it down on the jacket and basically sew it in the exact same way I've done the rest of the patches. So the same technique using a whip stitch. The only thing I'm going to change is the color of the fabric. So, the color of the thread. So rather than using red, I'm going to be using black instead, just because it blends in a little bit better with the detail on the fabric. And once we are done with that, we are finished. So this is the end result. I hope you guys like it. I will be filling in those gaps over time, but we need more patches for that. So if anyone knows where to get a 7 dust patch, please feel free to shout me because I've been looking for one for a minute. So that pretty much is it as far as sewing the jacket. I do have another 2 patches that I need to put on, but I'm going to be saving those for another day just because my hands are sore. And for those of you who have never sewn before, it can be quite time consuming, and if you're anything like me, you get pretty frustrated when things aren't quite going your way as quickly as you want them to be. So it's something to bear in mind. There's nothing wrong with just leaving a few of them and then getting back to it another day. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, sewing related, music related, patch related, metal related, whatever related, feel free to leave in a comment and I will answer it as soon as I can.